Kody Brown recently made an astonishing confession that could very well be the most shocking self-sabotage of his career. During a Fox morning show appearance in New York, he casually admitted that everything he said about taking responsibility for his failures as a father on Special Forces was a complete lie. This wasn't a misunderstanding or something taken out of context. He openly acknowledged that it was all part of a performance designed to appease the drill sergeants. After millions of viewers watched him break down in tears, claiming he finally understood where he went wrong with his family, it now turns out it was just an act. Kody himself said he only took responsibility because he was under pressure in a military-style environment and felt he needed to say what the drill sergeants wanted to hear. Not a single word he said in that emotional moment was genuine. When the divorces happened, Kody's children became the victims, forced to choose sides. And because of polygamy, they formed closer bonds with their mothers. Let that sink in. Kody Brown, sitting in front of cameras, crying real tears, delivering what seemed like a heartfelt admission of guilt for destroying his relationship with his children, only to admit it was all an act. Fans were stunned, and even the harshest critics of Kody began to wonder if this was a turning point. Was he finally becoming self-aware? But no, it was all smoke and mirrors. Kody walked into that studio, torched his credibility, and didn't even realize it. Instead of genuinely reflecting on his role in alienating his kids, Kody was simply trying to figure out what words would stop the drill sergeants from pressing him further. That's not growth. That's manipulation. His confession, where he claimed to take full responsibility, was merely him calculating the right things to say to get the heat off his back. But it gets even more disturbing. After admitting he lied, Kody quickly shifted to deflecting blame. He claimed his children naturally drifted away because of polygamy, not because of anything he personally did. He cast himself as a victim of circumstance, implying that the family structure itself made his kids pick sides. And then, as if that wasn't enough, he blamed his ex-wives for the toxicity. He suggested the show gave them a platform to air their grievances, something that wouldn't have been an issue if he were still in control of the narrative. In essence, everything was fine as long as Kody controlled the story. But once the truth started coming out, it became a problem. The sheer audacity of Kody admitting that he manipulated the public, then immediately turning around to blame everyone else, is almost like performance art. He's not sorry for lying. He's not embarrassed. He genuinely believes that admitting the lie somehow proves he's now being honest. What it actually proves is that Kody Brown is exactly who we always knew he was, a narcissist who will say anything to avoid true accountability. With the Special Forces finale airing this week, every emotional moment we saw from him on that show is now tainted. Those tears? Calculated. His confessions? He'll retract them the moment it's convenient. Just a few weeks ago, Kody appeared on Special Forces and seemed to have a breakthrough. The drill sergeants were pushing him hard about his relationships with his children, demanding he take accountability for the wreckage of his family. What followed seemed like a raw moment of vulnerability. With tears streaming down his face and his voice cracking, Kody admitted that his failures as a father came from not understanding how to be a good dad and husband. He confessed that he thought he was doing everything right, but he misunderstood what his family needed, and he made countless mistakes. The real kicker came when he admitted he hated being blamed for the family's dysfunction. That hatred made him resistant to taking responsibility. But instead of taking full ownership, Kody continued to deflect, claiming that the breakup of the family couldn't be solely his fault. Everyone, including his ex-wives, had to take some responsibility. The drill sergeants called him out, pointing out how his resistance was an immature way of looking at things. And yet, Kody couldn't break free from his cycle of blame. Kody Brown's reaction to criticism was something to behold. He sat there, visibly shaken, as if processing decades of denial in real time. Fans watching at home were stunned, and social media exploded with debates about whether this was the moment Kody would change. Even his harshest critics had to admit it looked convincing. The tears seemed real. The vulnerability felt genuine. For the first time in Sister Wives history, it appeared that Kody might actually be capable of self-reflection. But here's the thing about pathological liars and narcissists: they're experts at performing emotions. They know exactly what people want to see and hear, and they can craft those moments with stunning precision. Kody has spent years on reality TV learning how to play to the cameras, how to create a narrative, how to position himself as the misunderstood hero in his own story. So when the drill sergeants pushed him to own his failures, his survival instinct kicked in. He figured out the fastest way out of that uncomfortable situation, and it was clear. Give them what they want to hear. The performance was flawless. The tears, the cracked voice, the admission of being resistant to blame, it ticked every box needed to satisfy the drill sergeants and convince viewers that he was finally breaking through his defenses. And it worked. The interrogation ended. The pressure lifted. Kody escaped the hot seat, having successfully convinced everyone he'd had a genuine epiphany about his role in wrecking his family. Mission accomplished. But Kody made a critical mistake. He forgot that those tears and confessions were recorded and broadcast to millions. He forgot that admitting it was all a lie would make him look far worse than if he'd just refused to take responsibility in the first place. At least then, viewers would know where he stood. But instead, lying about accountability, performing emotional breakthroughs you don't actually believe, then casually admitting the deception on national television? That's a whole new level of dysfunction. And somehow, Kody thought this would be a good idea. Fast forward to yesterday, when Kody appeared on a Fox morning show to promote the Special Forces finale. The hosts asked him about those emotional moments on the show, specifically how he dealt with the mental challenges versus the physical ones. Kody explained that the physical challenges weren't difficult, but the mental interrogation by the drill sergeants really pushed him to his limits. The hosts showed the clip of him crying and confessing his failures as a father, then asked him to elaborate on what that moment meant to him. Here was Kody's chance to double down on his supposed growth, to prove that breakthrough was real. Instead, he did the opposite. Kody looked directly at the camera and admitted that everything he said was just a product of the military-style environment with the drill sergeants. He explained that in that setting, if you're even partly responsible, you're expected to take full responsibility. That's how it works. So, he went into those conversations planning to tell them exactly what they wanted to hear, that he was the problem, that he made all the mistakes, and that would satisfy their demands. But then, Kody dropped the bombshell. In reality, he said, the blame should be shared with his ex-wives. Let that sink in. Kody Brown openly admitted on live television that his tearful confession about being a terrible father was nothing more than strategic manipulation. He didn't believe he was solely responsible. He didn't think he needed to take full ownership. He was just performing for the drill sergeants, knowing that was the quickest way to stop the grilling. The entire emotional breakdown? It was calculated theater designed to get him out of an uncomfortable situation as quickly as possible. The audacity of this admission is truly staggering. Most people, when caught in a lie or exposed for manipulation, will at least try to spin it or downplay it. They might claim they were misunderstood or taken out of context. But Kody? He laid it all out there, with zero self-awareness about how it would make him look. He genuinely seemed to think that explaining his tactical lying would somehow make him look better. The logic behind Kody's statements was absolutely baffling, and the hosts' faces during his confession were priceless. You could see them processing his words, trying to figure out if he even realized he was destroying his own credibility in real time. They followed up with questions, likely hoping he'd clarify or walk back his statement. But Kody kept digging deeper, almost seeming proud of his ability to manipulate the situation. It was like he viewed it as a survival skill he had mastered, rather than a deeply problematic pattern of dishonesty. The man was literally bragging about lying on national television, completely unaware of how bad it sounded. But Kody wasn't done deflecting. Oh no, he was just getting warmed up. After admitting he lied to the drill sergeants, he quickly shifted to explain why his relationships with his children fell apart. And, surprise surprise, it had nothing to do with his own actions. According to Cody, his 18 children simply drifted away because of polygamy. It wasn't because he treated them poorly, or played favorites, or emotionally abandoned most of them while focusing all his attention on Robin's children. No, it was the structure of plural marriage itself that forced the kids to pick sides. He claimed that when the divorces happened, the children became victims of the situation, forced to choose sides, and because of polygamy, they naturally developed closer relationships with their mothers. It was just basic math, he said. The system was rigged against him from the start. Here's the kicker: Cody is positioning himself as a victim of polygamy's inherent structure, instead of acknowledging that his own choices and treatment of his children pushed them away. He's deflecting blame onto something abstract and systemic, rather than looking at his concrete actions. And what makes this argument so infuriating is this: Cody had great relationships with his older children within the same polygamous structure for years. Those kids loved him. They defended him. They participated in the family dynamic without issue. Clearly, polygamy wasn't the problem. What changed wasn't the family structure, it was Cody's behavior. Once Robin entered the picture, everything shifted. Cody stopped showing up for his other kids. He stopped making them feel valued. He created clear hierarchies, where Robin's children got everything, and everyone else was left with scraps. Christine's kids saw their dad choose Robin's family time and again. Janelle's kids watched him dismiss their mother, always prioritizing Robin's needs. Even Mary's only child, Leon, felt the sting of Cody's favoritism and emotional absence. These aren't just abstract feelings, they're documented patterns that played out on sister wives for years. The kids didn't drift away because polygamy forced them to choose. They walked away because Cody gave them every reason to leave and none to stay. Let's be crystal clear here: when parents divorce, children don't automatically have to pick sides. Healthy co-parenting exists. Many kids maintain strong relationships with both parents after a divorce. The only time children feel forced to choose is when one parent makes it impossible not to. When one parent is toxic, manipulative, or emotionally abusive, kids naturally gravitate toward the safer parent. That's not about polygamy, that's about self-preservation. Cody claiming his children were victims of divorce, who had no choice but to abandon him, is peak narcissistic deflection. He's framing their decision to distance themselves as something that happened to them, rather than something they actively chose based on his behavior. They're not victims of divorce. They're survivors of his parenting. And as if that wasn't enough, Cody had another target in his sights. This one was particularly revealing. He told the Fox hosts that things became incredibly toxic because of Sister Wives itself. He claimed that the show, by portraying every one of their flaws and faults, made everything worse. With everyone pointing fingers at each other, the kids naturally moved away from him, and that hurt him deeply. He said he was doing the best he could throughout the whole situation, but the show gave everyone a platform to publicly blame him for the family's destruction. For years, Kody Brown controlled the narrative on Sister Wives. His ex-wives walked on eggshells around him, covering for his bad behavior, making excuses for his absence and favoritism, and pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. The kids stayed quiet about how they truly felt. Everyone played their assigned roles in Cody's carefully constructed fantasy, where he was the benevolent patriarch holding a complex family together with sheer force of will. But over time, something changed. Christine left and began speaking her truth. Janelle followed suit, no longer making excuses for him. The adult children started to open up about how Cody actually treated them behind the scenes. Suddenly, the narrative Cody had controlled for over a decade began to crumble. People were sharing their real experiences, calling out his favoritism, broken promises, and emotional manipulation. They exposed the man behind the curtain, and Kody absolutely hated it. So now, he's blaming sister wives for making things toxic. But the show didn't create the toxicity, it just stopped hiding it. What Kody is really upset about is that he lost control of the narrative. He's angry that his ex-wives and children finally felt safe enough to speak the truth about their experiences. He's mad that viewers finally got to see who he truly is, rather than the version of himself he'd been carefully curating for years. The toxicity he's complaining about isn't the show, it's accountability. And here's the delicious irony. If Sister Wives is causing so much pain in Kody's life, if it's destroying his relationships and making everything toxic, he has a very simple solution. He could stop filming, walk away, quit the show. Plenty of his adult children would probably celebrate if he finally stepped back from the cameras. But he won't do that, because despite all his complaints about how the show ruined his family, Kody loves the platform. He loves the attention. He loves being on television, even if it means everyone gets to witness his dysfunction. So blaming sister wives for his broken relationships is just another tool in Kody's deflection arsenal. It's not the show's fault that people are holding him accountable. It's not the camera's fault that his behavior is being exposed. The show didn't create these problems, it just stopped letting Kody hide them. And that's something he truly can't forgive. Then Kody dropped another bombshell that perfectly encapsulated his complete misunderstanding of power dynamics. After admitting he lied to the drill sergeants and only pretended to take responsibility, he claimed that in reality, the blame for the family's destruction should be shared with his ex-wives. He genuinely believes that Christine, Janelle, and Mary are equally responsible for what happened to their family. He's trying to rewrite history, as if they were all equal partners in this disaster, all making joint decisions that led to the collapse of the family. The delusion is breathtaking. Let's be clear, these women were not Kody's equals in this family structure. Polygamy, especially the fundamentalist version that Kody practiced, is inherently hierarchical. The husband holds all the power. He controls the finances, makes the major decisions, and decides which wife gets his time and attention. The wives exist in a subservient role, by design. They're supposed to be submissive to their husband's authority. This is the foundation of the belief system they were all raised in and committed to. For Kody to stand there and claim his ex-wives should share equal blame for the family's dysfunction is absolutely absurd. How can you hold someone accountable for outcomes when they had no authority to change those outcomes? Christine couldn't force Kody to spend time with her kids. Janelle couldn't demand he treat her family fairly. Mary couldn't make him show up emotionally for their marriage. They were all operating within a system where Kody held all the cards. And now he wants to claim they're equally responsible for how he played those cards? It's gaslighting on a massive scale. And let's talk about what it took for these women to finally leave. They didn't just wake up one day and decide to leave. They endured years, decades in some cases, of emotional neglect and mistreatment. They tried everything to make their marriages work. They begged Kody to be present. They compromised their own needs and desires, trying to fit into his vision of family. They watched him choose Robin over and over again, still trying to hold things together. The amount of abuse they tolerated before finally saying enough is heartbreaking. What Kody doesn't understand, or refuses to acknowledge, is that leaving an abusive relationship takes incredible courage and strength. It's not a decision people make lightly, especially when they're deeply embedded in a religious belief system that tells them leaving is spiritual failure. These women stayed far longer than they should have because they were trying to honor their commitments and protect their children. The cycle of abuse Kody put them through, the manipulation, control, and emotional games, kept them trapped for years. The only person responsible for abuse is the abuser. Period. Kody can't claim his ex-wives share the blame for the abuse they suffered at his hands. He can't demand they take ownership of his failures as a husband and father. They were victims trying to survive, The fact that Cody still sees his ex-wives as equally responsible for their broken relationships proves that he has learned absolutely nothing from the years of dysfunction. These women endured impossible situations, tried to survive, and finally walked away, but to Cody, they're still to blame. It's the perfect example of his complete inability to take any genuine accountability. Then, the Fox hosts brought up something that's been swirling in the sister-wives drama for weeks: Mary's claims that Cody wanted her to sign a non-disclosure agreement (NDA) during their property